Second course is based on free-range pork. We're using the neck, so it's called the Scotch fillet of the pork. So it basically runs through the neck in the middle part of the shoulder. We marinate that in a little bit of salt and thyme and fresh garlic and bay leaves. Pork neck's got this amazing meaty flavour to it, but it's got this wonderful marbling of fat for it. So as you're sort of eating the meat, you get this really juiciness from the softness of the meat, and as the fat starts to break down, so you get this incredible rush of flavour in your mouth. To get started, what's going to take the longest? Probably the artichoke. So I think the origins of this dish would come from a classic, like a beef bourguignon sort of style, where you're marinating your meat first and you're slowly cooking it. And then we've sort of taken out the alcohol marination process and sort of adding a little bit of salt to marinate it, and then slow cooking it as you would a beef cheek or a daube or a bourguignon, that sort of style. So sort of taking that classic French and sort of adapting it from beef to pork, and playing around with those wonderful earthy, gelatinous sort of flavours in the pork. So for the puree, we're going to get our artichokes, and really annoying to peel these. So a little bit of oil in there. Peel the onion, nice and fine. Okay, and then a little bit of garlic. Then just finely slice the artichokes. And then a little bit of salt is quite important at the beginning, because the salt will help draw out the moisture, which will stop the onions and stuff from sticking and caramelising. We don't want that caramelised flavour, we want it nice and white and beautiful. What should we do? We'll do our Uranica potatoes, which is like one of these here. Now that's a dirty one, and then these other ones have been cleaned. So if you haven't seen them, that's what they look like. So just purple potatoes on the inside. So just peel the outside. We're going to lightly smoke them, caramelise them in a pan in a little bit of duck fat, and then we'll throw that into our pan, a little bit of seasoning, and then just sort of create a little cup that's going to hold our smoking gear in it. So you can see that starting to caramelise there. I'll just turn it down a fraction. I reckon our puree is just about there to add. Yeah, so what we'll add to that is, you basically just want to cover it with liquid. So we'll add touch of water and some milk, pure and natural as possible. So that's probably about enough liquid. We'll turn it up slightly so it comes to the boil. We'll turn it down so it just gently simmers away for about 20 minutes or so. So we've got a little bit of manuka, this is, in our blowtorch. Lightly burn this. This is by no means an essential part of a dish, it's just another little thing I wanted to show you, so if you feel like doing it, you can. And then what we do is, into that little cup we made with foil, we put the burning embers into that, and we set it into our pan, like so. And then we're just going to cover this with foil and capture a little bit of that smoke in there. All you do then is just chuck it into your oven for 15 minutes or so. While we're doing that, we can get onto our pork. This is New Zealand's only, not this piece, but this particular company, which is Harmony meat from Neat Meat. You can see the wonderful thing about pork neck, right, is if you can see it's got that intramuscular sort of marbling through it, all the nice speckles of fat, and what happens is all that breaks down for the slow braising period. So you've got the meat, but then all surrounding and in between the meat, you get this wonderful gelatinous, fatty, beautiful flavour, and obviously the fat carries a huge amount of flavour with it as well. So not only is it going to be tender and delicious, but it's also going to be full of flavour. The good thing about this as well is that it's quite hard to screw up. Like if you sort of, you can't, because you're not cooking it to medium rare or medium, if it overcooks a little bit, it doesn't really change it too much. If you cook it for an excessive amount of time, it will turn quite mushy, but you've got a lot of leeway either side of sort of, if it's slightly under, it'll just be a bit more firmer. If it's slightly over, it'll still be quite nice and soft. A little bit of thyme, some garlic, just smash a clove, and then pull the leaves off the rosemary into there. And then you can rub all this around in your fingers. What I would do is, if a mortar and pestle was here, I'd give it a bash in a mortar and pestle for a few minutes as well, just to sort of release all the oils out of the herbs. And then what you end up with is this nice aromatic salt, and then put all the salt all the way over it, and this will just cure it for a few hours. And then this other piece we'll just season with our little shotgun spray of salt, so it's nicely seasoned all over. and then into our very hot pan, which we'll turn down a little bit. And could you hear that crackling sort of sound? So that's how high you want it. You want it quite a high heat, because we just want to quickly caramelize it all over, just to give it nice sort of golden brown caramelization to it. And then with this piece of salted pork, you can do exactly the same process. Obviously what you want to do is just rinse away the excess salt before you go to caramelize it. Otherwise it might be a little bit too salty. So try not to wash it too much though, because obviously you're going to wash away all that beautiful flavour you've imparted onto it. So I just give it a really quick rinse and then a damp cloth just to sort of get that excess salt off there. So you can see that nice caramelisation on there is what we want. So that's probably about right now. So we'll take that and put it onto our plate. And then so I've turned that heat down a little bit, and then we'll add our vegetables to the pan. And then what I've got is sherry. So you can, this probably might cause a little bit of excitement, but you just sort of, you don't have to use alcohol for this, but it just adds a nice little flavour in there. As I say, the best scenario is to do it all in one pot, like a nice little casserole number. So we'll just pretend we've got one pot, and we'll stick that all into there like so. And then we add some stock.
The most important aspect of this dish is slow cooking the pork. What we look for in the braise is a little, what I refer to as a blip. So it's not a boil where the meat's going to cook too quickly and tighten up, or it's not too slow, so it's just going to sit there and sort of stew, and it's just this nice little blip of a really, really gentle simmer. And that over a period of sort of 3 to 4 hours, you end up with this amazing soft gelatinous piece of meat at the end of it.
Completely cover it in stock, which we'd call a braise. We'll pop it into the oven. You do. So this is one that we did before. Now you can, so just cut the end off that so I can show you a bit plated up. Pop the pork into the middle. So by making the sauce, what we do with that liquor, you can see how it's still, it's quite watery. You just want to reduce that down. This is some that's already been reduced. It obviously sets solid when it's cold, so I'll just heat it up. So we're going to make a little beetroot and cocoa butter. Beetroot juice that's just been put through the juicer, cocoa powder. Then we end up with this beautiful earthy red coloured butter. That sauce has just come to the boil there, so I'll add some of that butter. So we just add a couple of knobs of the butter to it, and we'll just give it this wonderful rich depth. Our Jerusalem artichoke puree, so you can see that there, how lovely and shiny and smooth that becomes once it's been in the blender. I won't bother doing it because it just gets a bit noisy, but you're basically just taking that pan, emptying the contents into the blender and blitzing it. It's as simple as that. And a nice little manoeuvre like so. A bit of this beautiful sauce here, and you can see how much colour and richness it gives to the dish. And then we're going to add very lightly smoked potatoes.
What I want to showcase is how simple these things are, and although it's a braise and people go, oh, you've got to do it for 4 hours, you're not actually physically doing that for 4 hours, it's just cooking itself. So it's a wonderful dish to learn how to do that can be prepared in advance, and it's really, really simple, but the results are spectacular.
I'm going to clean up my mess now, so I'll let you enjoy your wonderful pork. Bon appetit, and I'll be back with you for some sweet things very shortly.